Hello and welcome to our lab today. So we are going to be experimenting with fibers, seeing how they vary in terms of running different tests and really just playing around with fire, chemicals, boiling water, stains, microscopes, really everything is involved in this lab today. I am so excited to get started. Like always, this is my first time doing this lab, so you'll be with me in the mistakes that I make as well as the discoveries that I make. So let's go ahead and jump into it. What I have here, this is a collection of different fabrics. So at the top we have acetate, then we have cotton, nylon, silk, viscose or rayon, and finally we have wool. So having all of these different fabrics here is going to be really helpful in terms of comparing the way that the natural and the synthetic fibers vary regarding fire, different chemicals, etc. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking little strands of each fiber. As you can see, I've already started to pull some of the acetate out, and I'll be analyzing the different threads from my little selection of fabrics. So we're going to start with the burn test. So what I'm going to do is take a fabric from my acetate. Here's a little strand here. I'm going to take all of my strands out first so then I can just get straight into putting them in the fire, which is my favorite part. So I'll take a picture, I'll insert the photos of all of these more close up. Alrighty, so let's get to lighting things on fire. So first we're going to put our acetate over the flame. Now what I'm going to do is pay attention not only to how it burns, but also the texture of it after it's been burned, if it kind of crumbles into a soot, if it kind of forms like almost like a circular ball of plastic. So let's see, so we're starting out with acetate here. So the acetate, wow, burned very quickly. And it's kind of rolled in on itself. So let me see if I can even get anything to, it's gone. Okay, well that's just gonna cool down there and then we'll touch it in a second. But it looked almost like it disappeared. It all just curled in and rolled in on itself. And the smell, it is the smell I'm hoping doesn't set the fire alarms off. That's the first part. But the second part, I don't know how to explain it other than it smells like something has burned. Maybe I'll have a better comparison to it as I smell through more things that are catching on fire. This is cotton. Now the cotton is also burning fairly quickly, but not nearly as fast as the acetate, and it's not rolling in on itself, more so it looks like it's just kind of disappearing as it turns into smoke. So let me put that there. I don't really know what I'm going to feel in terms of crumbling because they're like disappearing on me. So this is the nylon. The nylon stays on fire just like the acetate. It rolls in, but rolling in on itself, it's not turning black, it's just turning almost brown. But it's lighting faster and it definitely, oh! So that like stuck the plate when I tried to wipe off a piece of it, so it got really sticky, and it smells very different from the cotton, I'll say, and it smells different from the acetate too. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so now let's go with the silk. I wish I had a better way to explain these smells that I'm smelling, but this is the first time that I've purposefully lit fabric on fire. I don't really have ways to explain the smells. So this is silk. The silk burnt very quickly. It's rolling in on itself similar to the acetate and the nylon, but it's not dissolving. This also smells, this smells more like burnt hair than any of the other ones have so far. So I'll say the cotton probably smelled more like burnt paper. The acetate also smelled more natural. The nylon had a very unique chemically smell to it. Meanwhile, like I said, the silk smells more like burnt hair. And as it's rolling in on itself, it didn't like bunch up in a ball per se, it just kind of condensed. Let me burn that a little bit more. Put that there. This is rayon. So the rayon burn, but it doesn't look like it's burning in on itself. This does smell more like campfire-y, I would say. But yeah, I'm not really able to collect like any soot from this just because of how thin the strands are. And then we have wool. So the wool smells almost like, well, I was gonna say wool, like if you're wearing like a wool jacket and it gets wet. It's very recognizable. The way that it's burning is similar as in terms of it's like rolling in on itself. It doesn't continue to burn when I take it away from the fire, which is different, so. Oh, and that one actually did create like a nice crispy part of ash, so put that in here. Alrighty, so that was our burn test. I'm gonna go ahead and blow out my candle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put our fabrics into some chemicals. So 3 chemicals that I have are acetone, which is common in nail polish remover. I have hydrochloric acid, and I have some sodium hypochlorite solution. I will put in a little insert here that talks about what each of these do. Alrighty, so acetone is commonly used as a solvent to manufacture plastics and other industrial products. Hydrochloric acid is a very strong acid that's also in our digestive system and is in most animal species. And then finally, sodium hypochlorite is just a fancy name for bleach, which is a base. So we've got an industrial solvent that is used for plastics, we've got an acid, and we've got a base. So I've got to wear some gloves because we are working with chemicals here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a strand of each of my fabrics and then I'm going to cut it into 3, put 1 in each of my test tubes here, deposit some of my solution, and then see how it reacts. So let me go ahead and get my strands of each of my test fabrics here. We're going to go ahead and get our samples in our solution. So what I'm going to do is cut each of my threads into 3. Then that way I have 3 samples to be able to put in each solution. Alrighty, so sorry if the aspect ratio is a little off. I had to switch, my iPad died, and now I'm using my phone. So yay for backup filming equipment. So where we left off, we were about to test our strands in different chemicals. So what I'm going to do is put 1 milliliter of each of my 3 chemicals into each of the test tubes, and then we're just going to report on how it interacts with each of my fibers. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so this first set I'm doing is acetone. So we're just going to keep an eye on what's happening in here. We're going to come back to that in a second because the next round I'm going to do is our hydrochloric acid. So looking here, you can see the hydrochloric acid starting to do its stuff on all the fabrics. Well, here, let me nudge this one and encourage it a little bit. Where did this fabric completely disappear? Is that the nylon? Oh, yeah, the nylon's completely disintegrating. Wow, that's awesome. I was concerned that it missed it somehow, but it turns out it's just disintegrating. All right, so let me put the cap back on here, and then we're gonna quickly do our sodium hypochlorite solution, because I wanna make sure I don't miss anything happening with these now that I know that things might disintegrate as quickly as our nylon did. All right, so let's look up close at what's going on in each of these. So for my first one, this is acetone. Looks like my acetate in the acetone is pretty much dissolved. You can see a little bit of the remnants here. but it looks like it's more just attached to the side than it is still existing. Meanwhile, my cotton still looks pretty intact. Now let's look at my nylon. My nylon is also pretty intact. You can see it there on the bottom. My silk also appears to be intact. My rayon as well. And this is the wool. Also seems to be nice and intact. So in our hydrochloric acid, our acetate seems to be fairly intact, as does our cotton. Check on our nylon here. Nylon is gone. Just like the acetone was, the impact that the acetone had on the acetate, our nylon's been completely dissolved by the hydrochloric acid. Our silk looks happy and dandy, still intact. Our rayon still looks happy, as does our wool. So far it seems like the acetone had a big impact on the acetate, and the hydrochloric acid had a big impact on the nylon, but otherwise the rest of them have seemed to go fairly unbothered. Let's look here at our sodium hypochlorite solution. So this is our acetate. Acetate looks intact. Cotton looks intact. Silk looks intact. Our viscose rayon is still intact. And our wool is still intact, but we'll give it more time. We'll see if anything happens. Whew, let's not drop that. Let's see if anything happens with these, because I'm surprised that everything seems intact. Alrighty guys, I just wanted to update you on what happened with all of our different chemicals after we've given them some time. So the wool completely dissolved in the sodium hydrochlorite, and the silk turned yellow. Otherwise, everything else seems to be pretty much intact. In terms of the hydrogen peroxide, nothing has changed. And in the acetone as well, nothing has changed. Alrighty, so we have done our burning test, we've done our chemical test. Now we're going to do our stain test. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our entire multi-fabric swatch into the water right here. So there it goes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add 3 milliliters of the fiber identification stain. This apparently is a mix of many different stains that would all react with fibers differently, which will be great because our next step is to look at it under the microscope. Ooh, that was cool. I thought it was gonna be green, but it actually was purple. Mix that around. And now what we're gonna do is add some vinegar. So we're going to add 3 milliliters of vinegar, and then we're gonna just let it sit for about 5 minutes. Alrighty, vinegar is in, and now we're just going to let it sit for 5 minutes. Oil, let the stains all react with our fiber swatch, and then we'll get it under the microscope. Alrighty, so it's been 5 minutes. I think that our fabric is good to take out. So what we are recommended to do is to then clean our fabric in some warm water. So that's what we're gonna do here. This has been kind of sitting in the residual heat, so we're gonna use it to rinse it off. So I can turn this off now. Been making it nice and warm in here while I've been working on this. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse this off, and then I'll bring it right back. So there's our fibers. Don't ask me why I chose to use the triangular beaker. This is making my life so much harder. Alright, so now what we're gonna do for the final test of this experiment is we're going to look at all of these fibers under a microscope. But before we do that, I have to dry them off because they're so wet. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a part of each of the different strips of fabric and we're going to analyze how they appear under the microscope. Before we do that, figured you'd like to see how this looks. So going from top to bottom here, you can see each one has stained in its own unique way. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and isolate some samples that we can use to look at underneath the microscope for our different samples here. Alright, let's go look at these underneath the microscope.